There is a war being fought right now, not with missiles, not with soldiers, with concrete, asphalt, and $460 million. The battlefield is a stretch of coastline in western Jamaica that most of the world has never heard of. The weapons are runways. The prize is billions of dollars in tourism revenue, millions of passengers, and control over the most powerful travel corridor in the Western Hemisphere. On one side, Miami, the undisputed king of Caribbean aviation, a machine that processed 55 million passengers in 2025, backed by a $9 billion modernization program and 5 decades of iron-fisted dominance. On the other side, a small island nation with a staggering debt load, a history of bold gambles, and a plan so quietly audacious that most people, even inside the aviation industry, still have not fully grasped what Jamaica is actually building. This is not just an airport story. This is an economic insurgency disguised as infrastructure. And by the time you finish this, you will never look at a Caribbean vacation the same way again. Every year, tens of millions of people board flights headed for the Caribbean. And a staggering percentage of them are not flying to Florida because they want to be in Florida. They are flying there because Florida controls the gateway. Miami International Airport has spent decades positioning itself as the mandatory transit point between the Americas and the Caribbean. You want to fly from Boston to Jamaica? You connect through Miami. You want to reach the islands from Toronto? Miami is likely in that routing. You want to access the Caribbean from Europe without a punishing connection? Miami has built its entire aviation empire around being the toll booth you cannot avoid. For 50 years, nobody has seriously challenged that model. Not because challenging it was impossible, because the infrastructure to do it simply did not exist. Until now. In a coastal community called Little London in the parish of Westmoreland, Jamaica, 20 minutes from Negril's world-famous 7-mile beach, something extraordinary is in motion. The Airports Authority of Jamaica has completed a comprehensive master plan for what will become Jamaica's 4th international airport. Not an upgrade, not a renovation. A ground-up, purpose-built, internationally capable facility with an initial runway length of 2,240 meters. Engineered from day one to accept Boeing 737s, the most common commercial aircraft on Earth, and scalable upward to handle large wide-body jets as demand grows. Total projected cost, $460 million US. Financed through a phased public-private partnership. And when it opens, based on the current development timeline, sometime in the early 2030s, it will do something no piece of Caribbean infrastructure has done in a generation. It will cut Miami out of the equation entirely. To understand why this is explosive, you need to understand what Negril actually is. Not just to tourists, to Jamaica's economy. Negril is the crown jewel of Jamaican tourism. The single highest density repeat visitor destination on the entire island. People do not just visit Negril, they are consumed by it. They return year after year, bringing partners, then children, then friends, until they become the couple at the beach bar who has been coming for 20 consecutive years and knows the bartender's grandmother by name. That is the loyalty Negril generates. And it generates it under a handicap that would cripple the tourism economy of any other nation. To reach Negril right now as an international visitor, here is what you have to survive. You fly into Sangster International Airport in Montego Bay, Jamaica's busiest international gateway. Then you spend anywhere between 1 and 2 hours winding through mountain and coastal roads before you finally arrive at your resort. 2 hours. After an international flight that may have already taken 8 to 12 hours. You are jet-lagged, you are stiff. You are watching your vacation evaporate before it has started. The Airports Authority of Jamaica has the data to prove exactly how brutal this is. Their surveys show that approximately 43% of all passengers arriving at Sangster in Montego Bay list Negril as their final destination. Nearly half. Nearly half of every person clearing customs in Montego Bay is then required to sit in ground transport for up to 2 hours to reach the place they actually came to see. In tourism economics, that is hemorrhaging. Every minute between touchdown and beach is a minute of frustration, a minute of money not being spent at a local restaurant or beach bar, and, critically, a minute that makes a visitor slightly less likely to return. Jamaica has known this for years. The question was never whether a Western Jamaica airport was needed. The question was whether it was possible. After years of feasibility studies, site evaluations, and engineering assessments across 7 candidate locations, the answer is yes. Not just possible. Happening. Here is how the plan works, and why every detail is more calculated than it first appears. The Airports Authority evaluated the existing Negril Aerodrome, the small domestic airstrip currently serving the town. As a potential upgrade site, it was rejected. The aerodrome sits near swamplands that make meaningful runway extensions structurally impossible. Little London, further east along the coast, offers what no other site can: sufficient flat, developable land for a full international runway, terminal complex, ground transport infrastructure, and the expansion capacity to scale upward as traffic grows. The initial design is a Code C airport classification, the standard that accommodates Boeing 737s and similar narrow-body jets that form the backbone of Caribbean air travel. But embedded in the design from day one is a critical decision. The facility is built to be upgradable to Code E classification, which would accommodate wide-body long-haul aircraft, Boeing 787 Dreamliners, Airbus A330s, the planes that carry 300 passengers non-stop from London, Frankfurt, or Sao Paulo without a single intermediate stop. That upgrade pathway is not cosmetic. That pathway is the entire geopolitical play, because a Code C airport changes Western Jamaica. A Code E airport changes the entire Caribbean aviation map. The AJ's own projections, described as conservative, anticipate that Little London could grow to serve approximately 1 million passengers per year within its first decade of operation. The facility's theoretical maximum at full build-out is 2 to 3 million passengers annually. Every single one of those passengers is someone who currently has no choice but to route through Miami or Montego Bay and endure the ground transfer. The new airport captures them from the moment they land. Jamaica controls the first impression, the ground experience, and the economic activity from arrival to departure. That is not a minor shift in market share. That is a structural redesign of how tourism money flows through the Caribbean. Now here is the part of this story that almost nobody is covering. The part that makes this an entirely different kind of confrontation. Miami International Airport is not sitting still. It processed 55.3 million passengers in 2025, its second consecutive year above the 55 million mark. It is the second busiest airport in the United States for international travel, and it serves more flights to Latin America and the Caribbean than any other airport in the country. Its $9 billion modernization plan is already underway, making it faster, larger, and more competitive than at any point in its history. Miami is not weakening. Miami is fortifying. That $9 billion fortress is exactly why Jamaica cannot wait. Right now, if you are a European airline, British Airways, Condor, TUID, Virgin Atlantic, and you want to serve Negril directly, you face a problem. There is no international facility close enough to the destination to justify a route. So most European carriers do not serve Western Jamaica directly, not because there is no demand, there is enormous demand, but because aviation economics only work when the destination airport can handle your aircraft and generate sufficient passenger volume to make the route profitable. The Little London Airport changes both calculations simultaneously. A 2,240-meter runway opens the door for narrow-body jets on transatlantic routes. The moment that facility exists, 20 minutes from the densest concentration of hotel inventory in Western Jamaica, carriers have a commercially viable argument for launching direct routes. And when they do, tens of thousands of passengers who currently connect through Miami will have a route that bypasses Miami entirely. That is the war. That is the crown Jamaica is reaching for. Before we go further, if this kind of deep dive into how small nations use infrastructure to challenge global power is the content you are here for, hit subscribe right now. We are building towards 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you matters. Hit that button and stay inside this story, because we are not even halfway through and it gets bigger from here. Now let's talk about the financial architecture, because it is more sophisticated than the headline number suggests. $460 million sounds enormous for a small Caribbean economy. But Jamaica is not writing a government check for that amount. Jamaica pioneered a model of airport financings that the rest of the world has studied and replicated: the public-private partnership concession structure. Under this model, the government does not build the airport. It secures the land, completes the regulatory approvals, and invites private international entities to bid for the right to build, operate, and manage the facility in exchange for a percentage of gross revenue paid to the Jamaican state. Private investors provide the capital and operational expertise. Jamaica provides sovereignty, strategic location, and the revenue stream. This is the same model under which Sangster International in Montego Bay and Norman Manley International in Kingston were developed. It has worked so effectively that delegations from developed nations have visited Jamaica specifically to study how it functions. Jamaica did not borrow this model. Jamaica built it, proved it, and is applying it again, this time in a location with an even higher potential return. What this means in practice is that Jamaica's direct financial exposure is a fraction of the $460 million total. Private partners carry the construction and operational risk. The Jamaican state captures the revenue upside. The risk profile is fundamentally different from what the headline number implies. But the risks are real, and intellectual honesty demands we name them. The AAJ's CEO stated in late 2025 that from the current master planning phase through business planning, development, and construction, the most realistic timeline before the first commercial plane lands at Little London is 5 to 7 years. That places the operational date in the early 2030s. Not 2027, not 2028. Anyone telling you this airport opens in 2027 is working from outdated information that has been superseded by the realities of public investment appraisal processes, land acquisition requirements, including the relocation of Little London High School and a housing scheme currently occupying part of the proposed site, and the inherent complexity of greenfield aviation construction on a small island. That timeline creates genuine vulnerabilities. Hurricane Melissa, which struck Jamaica in October 2025, is the most visceral recent reminder of how volatile this environment is. Hotels closed, flight operations plummeted. In some months of late 2025, visitor arrivals fell more than 60% compared to the prior year. The recovery has been strong. More than 1 million tourists arrived in the first quarter of 2026 alone. But the episode confirms that the economic assumptions underlying a multi-decade infrastructure project are not guaranteed to hold still while construction proceeds. And then there is the airline commitment question. Infrastructure can be built, runways can be paved, terminals can be constructed. But if European carriers decide that the expanded Sangster International, which is itself receiving a projected $750 million new terminal, adequately serves their Jamaica operations, the case for launching an additional Little London route weakens. Miami will not watch passively. Its aviation lobbying apparatus will deploy aggressive pricing and incentive packages targeting the same carriers Jamaica is pursuing. The battle for route commitments will not be fought on runway length alone. It will be fought in boardrooms in London, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam. And Miami currently has far more seats at those tables than Jamaica does. Jamaica's counter-argument is the 43% statistic. Almost half of every Sangster arrival is heading to Negril anyway. 11,000 new hotel rooms are projected to be added to Western Jamaica by 2030. The commercial case for direct access is not speculative. It is arithmetic. Whether that arithmetic is compelling enough to move major European carriers ahead of Miami's counteroffers is the question that only the next decade will answer. Zoom out even further, because this is where the story becomes genuinely historic. Jamaica is not just building an airport. Jamaica is building an argument that small island nations do not have to accept the geographic disadvantages that larger, wealthier nations have historically exploited. If Little London succeeds, if the airlines commit, if the European routes materialize, the hub-and-spoke model that has defined Caribbean aviation for half a century begins to crack. Not collapse overnight, crack. For the first time, there is a viable alternative routing that does not require Caribbean-bound passengers to pay toll. Consider who currently captures the value that leaks out of the Jamaican tourism system every single year. Miami does. The connection fees, the airport taxes, the layover meals, the overnight hotel stays when connections don't align, the retail spending inside one of the most commercially sophisticated airport environments in the world. Miami's airport economy extracts real financial value from every Caribbean-bound passenger who transits through it. The Little London project is Jamaica's attempt to reclaim that value, to intercept the economic flow before Miami takes its cut, to ensure that when a family from Manchester boards a plane for a Negril holiday, the first dollar of their vacation spending lands in Jamaica, not in Florida. The environmental case is also embedded in the design. The AAJ estimates that eliminating the long ground transfers between Sangster and Negril will reduce carbon dioxide emissions by approximately 16,756 metric tons per year. In an era when tourism is under mounting pressure to demonstrate environmental accountability, That is a credible argument to environmentally conscious European travelers and the carriers that serve them. And the ripple effects extend to every island in the Caribbean. Barbados is watching. Trinidad and Tobago is watching. The Bahamas is watching. If Jamaica builds the hub, every Caribbean competitor has to reconsider its own infrastructure posture. The tourist dollar has always been fragmented, airlines taking their cut, foreign airports grabbing connection fees, international chains extracting profits before the money reaches local communities. When a Caribbean nation captures the full value chain from the moment passengers board their plane in Europe to the moment they arrive at their resort, it changes the calculus for every island in the region. So where does this stand in 2026? The master plan is complete. The site is selected. The project is proceeding through Jamaica's public investment appraisal process. The financing framework is established. Land has been identified. 7 locations were evaluated. Little London prevailed. The engineering specifications are locked. What has not yet happened is groundbreaking. We are in the planning and appraisal phase. Development and construction lie ahead. But this is not the picture of a project losing momentum. This is the picture of a project being executed with the discipline that large infrastructure demands. Meanwhile, Sangster International's current terminal expansion is on track for completion by the end of 2026 into early 2027. The $750 million new Sangster terminal is in planning for long-term capacity through 2053. Ken Jones Aerodrome in Portland is being evaluated for international upgrading. The Lionel Densham Airstrip in St. Elizabeth has been flagged for development. Jamaica is not building one weapon. Jamaica is building an arsenal, a comprehensive national aviation strategy, executing simultaneously across multiple sites. What do you think? Do you believe the airlines will commit? Do you think Miami has the muscle to suppress this challenge before it gains altitude? Or is this the moment the Caribbean finally breaks free from the hub-and-spoke stranglehold that has extracted wealth from these islands for generations? Drop your real answer in the comments. Not just yes or no, tell me which side of this you're on and why. The best analysis gets pinned, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and this community is building something worth being part of. Here is the closing truth, the one that the conventional framing of this story misses entirely. Jamaica is a country of under 3 million people. It carries a debt burden that makes international lenders nervous. It sits in a hurricane belt that just delivered Hurricane Melissa in 2025. It does not have Florida's political machine, Dubai's sovereign wealth, Germany's engineering infrastructure, or France's diplomatic reach. By almost every conventional measure, Jamaica should not be capable of mounting a serious challenge to one of the most entrenched aviation empires in the Western Hemisphere. And yet, a master plan is complete, a site is selected, a financing model proven, a runway specification engineered, a phased development strategy designed to build demand incrementally rather than bet everything on immediate volume, a sustainability case embedded in the environmental design, a regional economic multiplier built into the geographic positioning, and a public-private partnership structure that has already turned 2 of Jamaica's airports into internationally recognized models of developing nation aviation governance. The audacity is not reckless. The audacity is calculated. This is not a small island dreaming too big. This is a small island that has spent decades studying how the game is played, learning who makes the rules, and designing a move that operates entirely outside the rules it was never embedded by. Miami sees an upstart. The aviation industry sees a long-shot bet on an unproven route market. But look closer. Look at the 43%. Look at the 11,000 new hotel rooms coming to Western Jamaica by 2030. Look at the CO2 reduction case. Look at the concession model that has already attracted world-class operators to a 3 million-person island. Look at the 5 to 7 year timeline and recognize it is not a weakness. It is the honest, disciplined projection of a government that has learned not to overpromise and underdeliver. The airport war you didn't see coming is real. It is funded. It is planned. It is proceeding. And when the first commercial jet rolls down that 2,240-meter runway in Little London and taxis to a gate 20 minutes from 7 Mile Beach, the question will not be whether Jamaica tried to steal Miami's crown. The question will be whether anyone believed they could pull it off. Jamaica believed it first.